property. We start with this report from our diplomatic correspondent Paul Adams.
At Kabul airport, the desperation is dangerous. An American military transport plane on the runway this morning, mobbed by Afghans trying to flee their country. Eventually, the plane takes off. Moments later, as it gains altitude, it appears that 2 people fall to the ground. Thousands of American and British troops have been sent to secure the airport, with helicopters being used to clear the runway. It's chaotic and ugly. Similar scenes on the civilian side. An Afghan airliner unable to leave as crowds frantically try to reach it. Outside the gates, shots ring out as the headlong dash, which began yesterday, continues. At least 2 people have died at the airport today, perhaps more.
A routine inspection of a Grumman A-6E intruder plane during the Persian Gulf War almost resulted in a fatal accident. This video shows the moment Petty Officer J.D. Bridges was sucked into an engine while checking the launch mechanism of the aircraft. The flight deck crew member was stuck inside the engine intake for 3 minutes, but managed to come out practically unscathed. But how did Officer Bridges survive? It was only thanks to a series of lucky strokes and a convenient feature of the engine design.
Yald, as you know, in recent months, there's been much speculation, analysis about what would happen in the last days of the US-led troop involvement in Afghanistan, what would happen after the last of US forces leave. But I think this is beyond anything, even the worst case scenarios that many had speculated about and many had feared, deeply feared. The scenes from Kabul International Airport are frightening and heartbreaking. Thousands of people desperately trying to find a way out, any way out. The US forces struggling to maintain control. And inside the city of Kabul, and of course we're just mainly getting reports from Kabul, there's the rest of Afghanistan which are suddenly find themselves under Taliban control. It's this idea about the new order has not yet been established and the old order is falling apart. And we've been reporting about that, some Afghans we hear from are hiding in their homes. They don't want the Taliban to know there. Those who venture out are questioned. We do know that the Taliban are trying to send reassuring messages saying we're in charge now, there's nothing to fear, that we are establishing order. But I think these are really, really frightening times for the people of Afghanistan. While this chaos and disorder continues, people just don't know what lies ahead. And the scenes from the airport underlines that many Afghans don't want to stay around to find out.
Indeed.
A scene. But now I'm going to play the power joker with a jet engine. Let me show you how much power one of those has got. Well, to find out how powerful a jet engine is, first you need a jet. Well, we've got one. A Boeing 747, and it's ours for the day. And just in case you think we're on a film set, have a look out the window. That's real sky.
The 747 is one of the great machines of our time, an icon. It's been around for 35 years and has carried 3.6 billion people.
Half the world's population across the globe. And it's big too. The tail is 6 stories high and you could park 45 cars on the wings. And even though it weighs almost 400 tons fully laden and carries this masseuse and 386 passengers, it can still travel at 575 miles an hour.
Which brings us neatly to the engines.
They're big!
These These are General Electric CF6s. They're 23 feet long and they weigh 6 tons.
One engine produces 58,000 pounds of thrust, and this has got 4 of them.
But 58,000 pounds of thrust, that's kind of meaningless. How do you get your head round that sort of power? Our plan is to drive a car behind the 747 when the engines are at full power. The question is, how far can the engines blow the car off course?
It's not as easy as you might think. It's too dangerous to drive them under here, behind the engines. They have to be well clear. In fact, they have to be way back here, past the tail, and then a bit more. That's a good 50 yards behind the engines.
The first car we'll be subjecting to a good stiff breeze is this Ford Mondeo. Modern, aerodynamic, good at coping with motorway crosswinds. Right, here we go. The pilot is easing up the throttle, building up the power. Now it's crucial that we release the car at exactly the right time, because if these engines run at full thrust for more than 20 seconds, they'll start to rip up the runway.
And then we'll be in trouble.
Okay, Mark, go on, man. We're at takeoff now.
Okay, the engines are at full power, and here comes the Mondeo. Now, can they blow this 1.5-ton car off course from 50 yards away? 3, 2, 1. There it goes! The Mondeo must have been blasted a good 50 feet.
Property. We start with this report from our diplomatic correspondent Paul Adams.
At Kabul airport, the desperation is dangerous. An American military transport plane on the runway this morning, mobbed by Afghans trying to flee their country. Eventually, the plane takes off. Moments later, as it gains altitude, it appears that 2 people fall to the ground.
But we haven't finished yet.
Well, that was a modern, streamlined aerodynamic car. So let's have another go now and see what happens when we let loose the Top Gear crosswind on something a little more, well, slab-sided. A Citroën 2CV.
Big engine, lightweight hippie car. This should be fun. Okay, here we go again. The engines are up to 58,000 pounds of thrust. The car is released. And 3, 2, whoa! Crikey! Yes, the 2CV really doesn't like crosswinds.
Well, there you go, you see. Next time you're out, you think you might encounter crosswinds or have to drive behind a 747 at takeoff thrust, you're better off with a Mondeo than a 2CV.